It's amazing when you realize that the schools in this country, the public schools, were once considered the future of democracy and of freedom for America. But that's no longer true. The average student graduating from high school in America today knows virtually nothing about the Bill of Rights, their freedoms, or the Constitution. Then there's those few courageous souls or students that occasionally take a stand for their freedoms in schools, and the hammer of censorship drops. All the surveys show that students are practically ignorant not only about their rights but their government. A recent survey showed that only 2% of the students graduating from high school could name the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The educators don't fare much better. In fact, educators that have some semblance of rights and know that maybe students do have rights don't allow kids to exercise them in the schools. They're very, very reluctant to enforce the Bill of Rights in America's public schools. It gets worse. The schools often today look like prisons. They have metal detectors, they're surrounded by barbed wire, policemen are walking the hallways, they have zero tolerance policies in effect, which kids are suspended for having Alka-Seltzer, lemon drops, all kinds of weird offenses. In fact, 20 states, kids have already been suspended for having Alka-Seltzer. The lesson that's being taught in our schools is that the government, which the schools are government institutions, have absolute power, and they don't really have any rights in the schools. This is students. Abraham Lincoln once said that what's taught in the classroom in one generation is the philosophy of the next. If that's true, then the philosophy being taught our students today is that they're going to live in a totalitarian state where they have no rights. The monster of political correctness has taken over our society, and it's really placed its imprint on our schools. Let me give you a few examples. There was a young student named Nicholas Noel a couple years ago at Grand Rapids Union High School that was the valedictorian, asked to give remarks about the school. So when he got up to speak, he was a very nice kid, decided he was going to tell the truth. And very nicely, he just described the schools as prison, his own school as a prison. Of course, the public officials got very upset. And right after he said the word prison, they turned the microphone off. And when he sat down, they told him, "You're not even going to get a diploma now," because they were so upset. This is a very nice kid. And later he said, people asked him, "Why did you say this?" He said, "Well, the schools push conformity. They want us to all act alike." And he described all these situations that I've already talked about. So he was right. He was just telling the truth, and he got punished. And Britney McCallum at Foothills High School in Nevada really found out if you want to exercise your free speech rights, you're going to get in trouble. Britney was asked to give what was important to her and speak about what was important to her, her own personal beliefs, to her high school classmates. She was the valedictorian of her class. She wrote out her remarks and submitted them to the school officials, as was the rule. And the school officials saw, uh-oh, there's some taboo words in there. She mentioned the Lord once. She happens to be a Christian girl. She mentioned Christ once and had a couple Bible verses. This is a 3-minute speech. So it was a very small portion of the speech. Well, they crossed out all that and said you can't talk about God in your speech because it sounds like you might be proselytizing. Well, this girl knew her First Amendment rights, Britney McCallum. So the day of the graduation ceremony, she got up and she decided to give the remarks as she had written them. Again, she understood the First Amendment. Well, when she mentioned the Lord one time and started to move to the next sentence, they unplugged the microphone on her. The amazing thing about this particular case is that there was a large crowd assembled in the auditorium, and many of the people started saying, "Let her speak, let her speak." They realized what had happened. Her free speech rights had been extinguished.
Okay, we would like to go on with the ceremony, please.
Britney filed a First Amendment lawsuit. The Ruth Institute defended her. We took her to court, and we've lost in the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals said this is a school-sponsored event. The school can't even put up the idea that it might be endorsing a religion, letting this little girl exercise her First Amendment rights. And it's going to be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Civil libertarians have always held that the First Amendment protects speech that offends, that people don't like. In fact, James Madison, who wrote the First Amendment, said that the purpose of the First Amendment is to protect the minority against the majority. And what he was saying, and when he used the word minority, he wasn't talking about racial minorities. He was talking about that minority of citizens that speak out of turn or speak out of line, the things that people don't want to hear that may be the truth. The other thing that civil libertarians have always understood is that speech is intended to persuade. All speech either proselytizes or is trying to attempt you and me to believe a certain concept or idea. That's the purpose of speech. The amazing thing in this case, though, is the ACLU came out in favor of turning off the microphone in Britney McCallum's case. An ACLU lawyer actually said that it's a school-sponsored event. If it's own school, she doesn't have a right to religious speech. The question I would have is, if the ACLU follows this logic consistently, no one will have free speech in public schools, especially students, because everything's a school-sponsored event. Everything's on school property. So what we're saying is we have little totalitarian societies. This is the ACLU position in this particular case. The other thing I would have is it really the ACLU's position that the government and government leaders can unplug the microphones of citizens it doesn't agree with? And again, religious speech is protected. It doesn't matter. I mean, if it's Allah or Buddha, whatever, or an atheist gets up and says, I don't believe in God and that's what's important to me, to her classmates, that's all protected by our freedom of speech. There's a long history here, folks. All regimes from Hitler to Saddam Hussein to other dictators now and totalitarians running countries in this world are unplugging microphones, they're turning off the internet, and they're censoring people and citizens they don't agree with. This is totalitarianism. We must remember that our freedoms are very, very delicate. They're like dominoes. And once they start falling, there's going to be a long line of freedoms that are lost until our freedoms are going to be like, and this is very clear, they're going to be like fallen soldiers face down in the dirt. They start when we're born, they follow us to school, shape and mold us and bend us to their rules. Tell us what's good, they punish what's bad. Wouldn't you know it, really been had?